Hello, everyone. I'm JeanClaude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this deep woo-woo episode entitled Battled at Stargate Aden with IndigoAngel. You can find her work at IndigoAngel222.com and also on YouTube at IndigoAngel and on Patreon, of course, at IndigoAngel. Let's give her a big warm welcome. Indigo, welcome back to the show.
Hey, JeanClaude, thank you for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be here as usual, and I look forward to diving into the shenanigans.
Well, there's a lot of shenanigans to dive into, of course. Wow, crazy times we're living in, crazy energies. I've been looking forward to having you back on the show to kind of give us a heads up on what's happening on the planetary grid. Every time you come on for a show, a lot of the audience are like, wow, that was so cool. Bring her back. We didn't understand everything she said, but please bring her back. We want to learn more. So here we are, Indigo. We're here for another episode today. And there's a lot going on, of course, in the Middle East. So we're going to concentrate there. We're going to dive through some of the stories behind the Stargates over there, the third Temple of Solomon, and where perhaps the Ark of the Covenant all meet together in this nexus point here at the Gulf of Aden. So folks, thank you so much for joining us on this live interactive show. We will be taking your comments and questions as we go. Before we do that, let's wait for a few more people to come in. Indigo, give us a quick update here. You've moved since we did our last show. How are things going on? Are you settled? Are you happy where you are? What's the energy like over there?
You know, yes, I did. I moved from Colorado to Southern Alabama, and it is definitely a change, but I think the frequency here is just higher, closer to the ocean, and I've also just, moved into a nice home, so I've been getting to, craft my space and just make things very personalized and sacred to my overall existence. Yes.
Cool. And how's the energy different for you personally? Do you feel that you're getting into this expansion energy, healing energy, just big trends for me, like alchemy? What's going on in your life right now? I'm sure a lot of people are interested.
I've had some old conflict resurface somewhat, and I always, when I have things like that happen, I do start tying them into the grids and what's happening on a collective level, because I see my own individual personalized experience playing out in the Stargates themselves, being a planetary grid reader. So I'm going to kind of tie some of that personal stuff also into the update today as well.
Okay. Very good. And I wanted to ask you something. Shoot, I forgot what it was. Oh, it'll probably come back to me. All right, let's dive into this story here developing in the Middle East. Where do you want to start? Do you want to perhaps go back a couple of weeks, couple of months here? Because you and I have been doing these shows. Oh, yes. Okay, I remember what I wanted to tell you. Last week, I did a show with Mariam Henin and, oh my God, now I forget the other woman's name. I do apologize for that, but I'll bring it up in a second here. But we were looking at everything in Egypt in this 22 mummy parade that happened over the Easter weekend, this huge ceremony that took place there. And as we were decoding some of these ceremonies, both these women had the impression also that there was something happening there. It had been long in the planning, and energy-wise, there was a shift happening in Egypt way before this parade, and also in Mexico, in the Yucatan. And of course, you and I have been doing shows on both these Stargates here in the last couple of months. And when they said the Yucatan, I'm like, Indigo is right on the track of all of this stuff. She's really tuned into the energy, and she's doing this grid work. It seems 3 to 4 months before things start happening in those locations. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating. So here you are now, I'm talking about the Gulf of Aden, and I wonder what's going to be transpiring in the next couple of months here as we're diving into all of these energies and how it's bubbling to the surface. So I wanted to bring that part up for you. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit here, talk about some of your work.
I just wanted to mention one thing. So I've been doing a lot of one-on-one personal interactive sessions, and we've been doing a lot of Stargate attunements. We're actually sending geometry down into the Stargates, and we're grid scanning, using color frequency. And about the last 3 divine feminines that I've worked with, we have accessed underneath the Sphinx. And there's just so much that, I mean, these are very, very psychic divine feminines, and there's just so much that they're immediately seeing underneath there. So underground tunnels, they're seeing beings there that are holding access keys to certain and particular things. They have divine messages in terms of just planetary shifts. There's just so much. There's like an entire energetic system that's operating underneath the Sphinx. And so it's just really interesting to see this come through other people when you're doing interactive sessions. So yeah, getting very activated by doing this. But yeah, so it's allowing me to also see more underneath the Sphinx as well. So I am, who knows what's going to come forward in the next month or two with some of this information that's been coming forward. But yeah.
And are you planning, let me bring up some of those underground tunnels here in the Giza Plateau. A lot of people had been talking about the entrance underneath the pause. I did a show about a month ago with another person too. We talked about there was another entrance. I believe it was here. What I'm pointing at is the side of the right, I think, buttocks of the Sphinx here. And this is a diagram of some of those underground chambers that presumably exist there. So there's more and more of this information bubbling up. And I felt that that ceremony in Egypt with the 22 mummies was kind of like a closing of all of those negative energies and how those mummies' energies had been being used for the last couple of thousand years. And now we were entering into this new realm. So that's very fascinating. Let me bring that back up here. That was the Quantum Woo episode with Mariam Henine and Alia Galal. So that was the name of our special guest. Anyways, if you guys haven't seen that episode, do go check that out. It was quite fascinating. And we did go through quite a bit of the ceremony itself, the hymn to Isis, the music, the garments, the sacred geometry, all of that stuff. So it was really, really a fascinating episode.
That is fascinating. What kind of geometries were she seeing?
Oh my God, this was a 2-hour show and we could have done a 5-hour show. There's a lot there and I don't want to confuse all the audience, but please do go check that show. But maybe you and I can come back to this and look at it and see what your thoughts on it. And maybe we could do a second segment to the Heliopolis show we did a couple of months ago and see maybe where that ties in. More than happy to do that. Thierry Herrera says, Salut Jean-Claude, ça va, j'adore ton émission. Hey, thank you. Appreciate the French. Love that. And Diana from Toronto. Hi, Diana. All right, let's get started. Where do you see and how have you been basically guided to start looking here at the Gulf of Aden and some of the energies that are all converging at this point? How did you get attuned to this?
Well, for me, I start getting imprinted pictures of just geographical locations I need to start looking at. So I just started seeing a underwater Stargate in that area. And so I just start diving into the research and it starts putting the picture together for me in its totality. But yeah, and so sure enough, there's just a whole bunch of treasure there. I mean, it is so immense what is here and what is going on here in the timelines. Multiple timelines are running here. It's almost like a time warp is playing out here. There's a lot of galactic nations that are involved, and there's a lot of high secret covert missions that are taking place in and out of this Stargate location, and it's very fascinating.
Wow. Okay, very cool. So let me zoom in on this map here. I know it's always tricky. It moves really, really fast on me when we're live for some reason. So this is the area. You can see the Gulf of Aden right here. It's just on the southern western tip of Yemen. Now, in terms of the Stargate itself, you see that underwater, Indigo? It was originally above water and now it's underwater? Or is that, are you seeing maybe in a different dimension?
7 miles deep underneath water. And I seen how, as I've gotten into some of the research, the secret space program and also the global Navy fleets are guarding and protecting the Stargate, whether they are consciously aware that they are protecting an Orion Stargate, because I seen this as an Orion Stargate. I actually seen the Stargate on the outside of where these two land mass bridges here come together between not sure the name of that country, in Yemen, but I seen it on the other side. And essentially,
So if I'm putting my arrow down, tell me where to go, left, right, up, down. Do you see my the hand there?
yeah, essentially left. Yes.
Somewhere
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
Okay, just before the actual gate there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And there's just a lot of things that are playing out within this area. Essentially, this is the most dangerous location on the earth. There is Somalian piracy that's happening here. And you have to remember, every civilization and every country and every participant, so to speak, is operating from a galactic level on some level. So whether like they're conscious of that interaction or not. And so all of these smaller things that are playing out, such as an intense amount of piracy attacks, things that are happening, very dangerous things are happening in this area. And so I would say this is the transport Orion Stargate, where they're entering and exiting the planet. This is the entrance point I was seeing into the race morphogenetic field of the planet. Okay, and not only are they accessing this for seeding, race seedings, and entering and exit, but they're using it to bring forth through certain missions, Orion Nibirian Royals, to access that Anunnaki Arrow spaceport that's in the Sinai Peninsula. So there's all kinds of things that are happening, because as they go through the Red Sea, there's that canal there that they can have underwater travels to and from underwater tunnels that essentially lead into the Anunnaki Stargate location, which is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Okay, so I was just bringing up some of these news articles. Of course, in last week, we've seen some bombs going left and right here, and in the last couple of hours still, Hamas fighting raises questions about the war crimes. So
it's the oldest ongoing generational mortal combat conflict, and it's been going on since Ramadan, about 7 days ago. The Israelis and the Palestinians within Gaza, in the east side of Israel. And so this is where the Zionist and the nationals of Israel, and then the Hamas, which are the militants of the Palestinians, they've basically engaged in like rocket power warfare. And it's so crazy because I've been reporting on the Stargate of Aden 3 weeks on my channel before this even happened. And I had highlighted it in 2 separate videos. But essentially this Stargate passage portal, it's activated, and it's kind of what's playing out, and it's what's playing a major role in these quantum exchanges and manifestations that are happening. And kind of what I've been seeing personally through my own spiritual connections with things is I've been seeing that these warfares are the precursors to the coming of the third Solomon temple, when the Messiah is supposed to come. So this is essentially like a subatomic drama that is not in the conscious collective, but it's a subatomic reality that's exacerbating the tension between the Muslims, the Jews, the Israelis, the Palestinians, this conflict. And so this issue might even be at the core of what this everlasting war is about.
Oh, yeah, so you just brought up the third Temple of Solomon here. So I brought this up for the audience here. You guys can take a quick snapshot and read this. And essentially, just energetically speaking, why is this so critical now? I mean, in the last regime of the U.S. government, there were talks about moving the capital. There was a lot of peace talks going on, and all of this seems to be now in the air as we have this new pretendency in Washington. So what in your view is happening? Is it very 3D? Is it driven by the 3D, or is it driven by other dimensions here? And why now? How are we connecting all this?
Definitely driven by the 3D. I mean, if you want to get over the reasons why it's in conflict, it's over land and territory and who's allowed to be where and go where and do what. all the surrounding countries have their own agendas, putting pressure on things. Like all of that's playing out very much on a 3D level. But there's also this battle that's met on an etheric level, and it's with these seals. The King of Solomon seals come into play with this. Also, those 44 seals that basically control the archons. And so the archons are basically have medallions and curses and spells and mechanisms placed over them that's causing conflict and war within the soul egregores. It's causing like soul collective egregore guerrilla warfare, and that's happening on the galactic quantum spectrum, so all the way to the 3D. And I also feel there's other things going on here. I feel that these are distraction tactics to true agendas, which on a galactic level may be where they want to prevent the Ark of the Covenant from opening up because, or they're trying to prevent like Nibiru Orion Royals from accessing Ark technologies, because if the Ark was to open, it would essentially heal the planet. It is basically technologies that would restore like human morality. It would restore ascension capacities globally to mankind. And so this was prevented at the time the first King of Solomon temple fell, and when the Ark of the Covenant was essentially removed during Solomon's reign, because they essentially, that line that I drew around Africa, that was the path that King of Solomon took all the way around Africa. And I believe that they placed seals all the way around Africa to actually prevent the Ark from leaving Africa. If the Ark ever did leave, it only traveled as far as Jerusalem underneath Dome Rock. And so I think that this Ark of the Covenant energy is being siphoned off anyways through the Stargate of Aden. And that's why I kind of drew up this, what I'm calling the Ark of the Covenant grid, was to just show some of the locations that the Ark of the Covenant has been, also the Mother Ark Stargates, and also the portal passages, because the Ark of the Covenant isn't just the Ark of the Covenant. These are passageways that lead into the Aurora time passages, into the Polarian Gate system, which is in Norway, where the Yggdrasil, the planetary universal tree of life, is located. That goes into Andromeda. So there are negative agendas and Orion Dracos and different facets of Orion systems, Mintakans, Regalians, that are feeding off of these portal passage systems to get to and from Mintaka. So there's just all kinds of crazy stuff that's going on. But I really think that the Ark of the Covenant being opened would really relieve the quarantine frequencies that are around the planet, because the Earth is under a quarantine due to everything that's happening globally. And
okay, let's backtrack a little bit here. I'm sure everybody's heads are spinning, so including mine here. So let's go back. You mentioned the Stargate, so let me bring up a frequency here. So your understanding, around 7 miles underwater here, there's this Stargate at the Gulf of Aden, a spot, Aden, I think you pronounce it. Now, who's accessing this now and why? Start there. You mentioned the Orions, but who essentially? Is this for our good or for our bad? Are we getting reinforcement from the bad side? Are we bringing in new reinforcements from the good side in terms of the star seeds? Or is it both? What's happening right now?
I definitely see that both is happening. Both things are happening. I think that there is, they're trying to transport Orion, Nibiru, Anunnaki royals to and from Mintaka Galactic Councils, to and from the Sinai Port Station. They're also trying to have communications and other facets of Orion nations. Draco Orions are trying to use the Stargate. Mintakans, like I said, Regalians. There's also the Nordics. The Nordics are involved, so the secret space program is involved through this Stargate. And also other Orion leagues, such as like the Zetas. So there's just so much that's happening here. I believe the UK is involved. Nazi Germany is involved in other ways. CERN is involved. CERN wants to have access to the Ark of the Covenant as well, because this would allow them to experiment on the quantum frequency of the Ark.
Okay.
They also have defense station here. Is like the whole global military fleets, Navy fleets are involved in this Stargate. This is definitely considered one of the most powerful and most dangerous stargates on the Earth, this access point into the Red Sea here. Just because it leads into the holiest of holies, which is the Anunnaki Stargate in Jerusalem. So, I mean, there's tunnel systems, like you said, underneath these things that lead. This is how they're doing a lot of this stuff. They have, well, they have, and the U.S. government knows about this. So, like, when we're talking about disclosure happening, disclosure's kind of already happened. The U.S. government knows about this stuff. They have the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Programs. I was watching something on this the other night called ATIP. It's like a $22 million program in the Pentagon, where they've been researching crafts that have been coming underwater in this location that essentially defy gravity. They don't come up on radar. There's all kinds. This is how they're doing this transport. And so there's just so many extensive timelines that are running here and that are linking into several other Stargate portal systems.
And what do you think is the connection, if any, to this story that made the news there a couple of weeks ago with that ship? We don't need to name it here, that was stuck in the Suez Canal. A lot of people were talking about the fact that there was more than met the eye there, and perhaps there was... yeah, this is a censored show on YouTube, so I'm going to choose my words here, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about here. So what was the connection there? Was that a precursor to what perhaps we're seeing now at the Gulf of Aden?
I definitely feel that it was. And I actually touched on that in my last update somewhat, is that it was either some type of distraction from them allowing some sort of transport or some sort of witness protection program or some sort of escort mission that they had coming through, where they were either trying to prevent something from happening or distract something, to be like, look over here at this while we're actually doing something over here.
Wow.
I definitely feel it's connected.
Okay, let's go back now to the Ark of the Covenant. You mentioned Egypt, Ethiopia, and that's very fascinating because there's a few possible locations there, and if you follow the story of the Dogon tribe, there's I guess word of mouth knowledge of where this went. There are gatekeepers holding this information, and what was fascinating to me, I know that. Graham Hancock had done some work on this too, and you could probably find some of his episodes still on YouTube.
There's also a book he wrote called The Sign and the Seal. It's really, really good. All his research went into that book, and he actually went to all of these locations and had like firsthand account.
Right, and including this one here too. I remember, and this is just fascinating to me how this is carved out from the top down into this amazing architecture here. So let's talk about that. Why, in your view, or in the view of the people you're working with, is the Ark of the Covenant not able to leave the continent of Africa? What's that all about?
Well, I feel that at the time of Solomon's seals, that he basically went exploring around the coast of Africa, and he placed fifth dimensional security seals all around Africa. To prevent, to protect people from it getting in the wrong hands, from accessing the Ark of the Covenant. So they placed shields all around the coast of Africa. And this kind of ties into some of my UK grid updates, where I was talking about the Black Sun seal and the Nazi seals, and how I felt that these were actually planetary seals, just similarly to the J seals that were placed during the time of Aryan occultism, just as the J seals were placed at the time of Atlantean occultism. And so that there's a whole new set of seals that we're just starting to wake up to, essentially to realize certain things that are being held or kept in secrecy or in place. And so I kind of feel that the Solomon seals almost like kick that off. Like that's kind of the beginning point to where the core of this energy is being generated from. And so
RDT here is saying, yeah, the Farsight Institute had remote viewed and saw the Ark of the Covenant somewhere in a dusty, sandy place, Middle East, perhaps. So they're still seeing it. They're not seeing it at Rosling Chapel or anywhere in France or in Europe, for that matter. They were looking at a desert type of climate. I remember that episode. Wow. Okay. Now, moving forward here into what perhaps is going to transpire in the next couple of weeks, for those who are watching the show and who are attuned to the grid on the planet and who have been guided to do maybe some grid work, what can you call upon them? What energies can you call upon them to maybe help improve the situation here for the highest good of humanity? What would you say to them?
I would say that start maybe working on the seals within you. I'm curious to self-experiment more so to see if I can actually access the quantum energy of the Ark of the Covenant. Just to, I guess, integrate that into my consciousness to try to understand the depth of the Solomon seals and what it is or isn't holding in sacredness or in secrecy. So that's kind of my own personal evolution with it. Definitely just staying open to higher consciousness and the rise of humanity and getting on mission, getting in a place where you can step into supporter roles, that way you can assist others and getting on mission, because the more people who ultimately achieve that fifth DNA strand or wake up to ascend are only ever shifting those dark matrices or phantom matrices or entrapment matrices around the planet,
Right.
essentially to help lift these things.
Okay, so first things first, I agree with you. You got to work on yourself. So don't attempt any work, energetic work, if you're not energetically in tune. So it goes without saying, be careful with all of this. Now, if you are going to be attempting to communicate with the Ark, I have to bring up this question to you as well, because we understand through a lot of the literature and some of the stories that were passed down that these priests, if they weren't wearing or going through the proper ceremony to even access or get close to the room where the Ark was held, they would get horribly sick and die. Something akin to maybe what we would see happen for radiation poisoning patients today. So there was something about anointing yourselves with proper oils, the meditation to bring your frequency up, and also these different metals and crystals that they would wear on a breastplate. So how can one access the energy today of the Ark, maybe telepathically or remotely, and still engage also some of the protection that might have come through some of these practices? Like, how do you do that etherically? What would you recommend to the audience?
I will definitely want to seal your light body field. With the sacred geometry, even working with the Star of David itself has been known to be a 12th dimensional sacred geometric. It comes with a 12 strand like scalar wave mechanics within the geometry itself. So you could induct the geometry into your energy field, and you can seal and you can protect your light body field before you do any work. You definitely want to ground before you do any work, and you definitely want to seal your light body field with the highest 12th dimensional intention. So that way
you
you're
said the Star of David, and also in one of our maybe 3 or 4 shows ago, we did one of these induction, I think, with the Merkaba. Maybe we could do that on the Patreon after show as well for the audience to help them with that, or maybe do a crystal clearing of sorts too, if they want to empower themselves with some of their crystal friends. Do you have time after the show to do a specific Patreon episode for the folks?
Yes, absolutely. I actually look forward to it. I really think doing a crystal clearing, as I was telling you, I kind of wanted to work with you to see how much we can get some of your chakras open, and then maybe do some of the more experimental type work where we actually try to scan in certain sacred locations to see what we can see in these areas.
That could be cool. Okay. So now going back to maybe doing the work here, what are your next steps apart from maybe experimenting, trying to connect with that energy? Is there any other hotspot on the planet that you think right now might be connected, or is there any events coming on the horizon as a result of this? And if so, what are those events? Because we're seeing turmoil everywhere here. There's a big crack in the narrative with the health situation and the political situation, the financial situation. It seems that all of this is happening at the same time. And of course, the Pentagon wants to continue this narrative of UFO disclosure and potentially a fake alien invasion. So if we didn't have enough with one thing, we have all of it raining upon us here at the same time. So what do you see else connecting to all of this here, temporally speaking?
Particularly with this grid, I'm curious to tune more into the mother arc sites. If you go back to the map, I can show you.
To the map, okay.
Yes.
Oh, and Karen is asking if you're a secret Pleiadian being. Maybe.
Well, I'm Hydran, so I do have some oppositional Pleiadian markers in my birth chart, but I am mostly a Hydran, which I do feel is the progenitor race to the Pleiadians, which is definitely a very controversial statement to say itself, but I do feel just because of what I've seen in Lemurian timelines and what I've seen at Pleiadian Stargate sites on the Earth, that there is a lot of evidence showing serpent cults origin. So I do feel that they are either interbred or that Hydra is the progenitor race to the Pleiadians.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. In my last interview with Kerry Cassidy, the one that was deleted from YouTube here, again, with all the censorship stuff, it was called The Black Woo. You guys can now find it. It's on my private server on the pay-per-view side. So if you want to go see that episode, just go to beyondmystic.net/pay-per-view, and you can access that here on the private server that we're paying for, so that we can store all of this uncensored content. Quite a few things here too. If you haven't heard of that, go do check that out. But anyways, Kerry was talking about how what happened to the Pleiadians is also what's happening to us. So they were also a result of all of these wars and genetic manipulation from other star systems. So, and that also ties in again to some of the Oceanidine material too. There's a lot of people looking into this, and there's way more studies. So when people are talking to us about disclosure, showing us a Tic Tac, a UFO, doesn't cut it. There's way more to learn specifically about who we are, our history, and how perhaps we've been manipulated in our evolutionary trajectory.
I do feel the Pleiadians have been manipulated a lot, and maybe even the most on some level. Just coming up with that recent Pleiadian alignment that we just had, I was seeing a lot of like the forced breeding or the forced interbreeding with reptilians that the Pleiadians have had to undergo. And a lot of that was also coming through Aldebaran transmissions that I was just seeing how a lot of starseeds or Pleiadian starseeds, divine feminines, a lot of them are kind of forced to breed reptilian children until they fulfill this like particular contract. And I was seeing this kind of through the Stargate of Aden as well. And until they fulfill that contract, then that sometimes sets the markers for their ascendancy or for their biological awakening. But yeah, it's interesting. And then even those children will carry those contracts. So then they also have to fulfill an interbreed reptilian. There's all these stipulations in the galactic realms that are playing out. But I think a lot of those forced coalitions are coming through that particular Stargate.
Right. Okay. Indigo is saying that totally agree with JeanClaude. Okay, so there's another Indigo in the chat. I love it. Okay, I got confused earlier. I thought it was you who was chatting before the show. I'm like, wait, that's not
I'm just chatting with us here.
Yeah, that's funny. Ronnie says, this stuff is so much more interesting than anything ever, 100%. Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate that. And you know what's cool about this too? And again, I'll say it again now. Indigo is on the trail of a lot of these things. It's not the first time that she comes up with stuff and everybody's like, yeah, what she's talking about. And then suddenly 2 months later, oh, look at that. There's a lot of activity where she was just talking about 2 months ago. And so go check out her YouTube channel. Again, let me bring that up and let me bring the link down to the audience here. If you guys are not aware of her work, and you think what we're doing now is cool, go check out her YouTube channel. So let me bring that down. So there's a link there. And also go check out her Patreon. Let's talk about that very quickly here. What do you offer? I know we'll get into your website as well. I think you have a coupon code for the audience today. Actually, let's start here. I just changed that now based on the link you just sent me. So we have a coupon code BeyondMystic_, 2 words. So Beyond space Mystic. And what package is that for on special right now?
That is for my diamond package, which offers all of my services. So that would be a starseed origin reading, an Akashic record reading, a one-on-one spiritual consultation, a J-seal removal, and an advanced avatar master practices session.
Okay, so that's the Cadillac there of packages
Exactly,
you're talking about.
exactly.
Okay,
But it's a wonderful package. I feel it's definitely will get you a lot of information in terms of your galactic identity, your galactic origins, also a little bit into civilizational and timeline seedings prior to this incarnation, also ties into this incarnation, and also just goes into removing you from those Atlantean occultism seals, and then really dive into a lot of interactive work that allows you to expand in consciousness. So we definitely will get to know each other very, very well.
right.
But it's nice to be able to work interactively with people. So much comes from that. And so.
And are you feeling right now I've been getting this here as well from the channel, some of my friends in my local area. There's a lot of divine feminine coming online now, and they're all like, whoa, I need to do something. I need to do this clearing, this purging. I'm getting activated. Like they're feeling it, and they're trying to create these women's group to kind of support each other. Do you find the same thing happening now here with either your Patreon or your services online, that there's a lot of women really, really just now clicking to this information and just like really starving to get started and get themselves empowered? Is that what's happening?
I haven't noticed like a push or a wave just now, because I feel like that's kind of always been playing out, at least for me. I've definitely have been a part of a lot of just powerful women's circles overall. I recently have had a lot of divine feminines who are extremely psychic coming into my reality. I do know I have some divine feminines that are going to Mount Shasta here towards the end of May. I might be doing a live Zoom with them they're going to go in there and do some grid scanning under the mountain there to kind of see what they see and kind of report that. And so yeah, I think divine feminines overall are just really awakened and are really starting to step into like their co-creator roles and super supporter roles, where they're going to be bringing a lot of the collective with them in there.
In my last show, Decode with Janine, where we did talk about the 22 mummies, we talked about this rising of the divine feminine energy, and that since then too, in her circle, a lot more women are just like really, really waking up. And there was something also affecting the moon cycles. So it wasn't just the shoulder thing. So there was another connection to that energy as well. So it's like, yeah, again, how do I say this on this show? It was all about reconnecting with the inner power of how our bodies and the mechanisms and the cycles of our bodies work. So as opposed to being attached to the moon, Saturn matrix, we were somehow cutting that string and getting control again of that. So complicated show. We could do a 2-hour show just on that. But anyways, that's fascinating. Okay, so for the folks who maybe not ready to do the big Cadillac package yet, can they start on your Patreon? And if so, where? Like, where do they get the information to at least maybe start with some of the meditations, some of the clearings, some of the induction of the sacred geometry? Where would you point them to here to at least get their feet wet to start with you?
My lowest package will give them access to all of my videos on Patreon. So that's a good place to start. It's pretty affordable. It's $11.11 in US dollars. And then if they want to move up to the bigger package, that one would give the $30 per month. That one is for if you would like to include a starseed origin reading with that. But then I have a higher package, I think, below that, which would include hourly one-on-ones once a month. And I do have set days every month that I do those. So I'll usually just kind of blast out a notification and have people respond to go ahead and sign up for the days that I'm doing it.
So here, and with Patreon, you can cancel at any time. So people have to get into this one, and this is in Canadian prices. So for you Americans out there, it's $44.44, and that includes that 1 hour reading. Is that what you just said?
That's a 1 hour monthly interactive session.
Oh wow! Okay, very good. And or at the very least, the lowest package here at 1111, all the meditations, the JSON removals, all of that stuff is there. So, okay, well, that's quite a bargain. Okay, so folks, check that out. That's patreon.com /IndigoAngel. And yeah, I mean, so far, every time we do these shows and people come back and they say, oh my God, JC, I had a reading with Indigo. You know, especially the Starseed Origin, I think a lot of people are really, really interested in that right now. They know that they're connected to something else. They've been awakened to it, and now they're just like, okay, now what? Where? How? What do I do? You know, so everybody's trying to not run, but start walking first. So this is the first step, is knowing where you're coming from and what maybe those energy contracts and those soul contracts that you have within you. And so Indigo can help you out on that. I know when she did my reading a couple of years ago, it was a long, extensive reading, and every time I read, I'm like, okay, I have to read this again. I'd go back to the beginning, and so there's a lot in there, folks. Give it a try. You'll enjoy it. Okay, so we're 40 minutes into this episode. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up? At the Gulf of Aden, do you want to do a meditation on this right now here before we go to the Patreon after show? Do you want to talk about the Ark of the Covenant again, or the Third Solomon Temple? It feels like we haven't hit everything. Is there anything else you want to chat before we go?
I feel like we did kind of roundabout hit most things. It's just kind of diving into the details on the map. We could go into that more.
Okay.
As far as the meditation, I kind of say we leave that for Patreon.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now you had sent me some zoom-ins with some pointers. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to talk about also what I thought that passageway was being used for. So I kind of feel that they're accessing the Ark of the Covenant through that passageway, because you have to remember Aksum, Ethiopia, which is where it supposedly is right on the other side of that Stargate. You can see why this would be such a precious place where so much conflict is playing out, because there are such precious relics just sitting on the other side of that Stargate. And so that was kind of the whole point of this, is that this Stargate isn't just a Stargate. This is what allows galactics to interdimensionally and interplanetarily travel through our systems and into other systems. And so this is so much more than just a Stargate. It's a intergalactic highway of navigation.
Right. And you know what's funny too? I didn't notice this when you first sent me the slide, and I was thinking about the Suez Canal. Of course, you had written it here, the trap ship. And also, okay, so talk about this Anunnaki spaceport. What's there in physicality? Do we have remnants of that? Or is that Temple Mountain you're talking about? What's here?
Well, I don't really know if there's remnants of that there or not. That kind of goes into some of Zachariah Sitchin's findings, where he said that was the original Anunnaki spaceport, where all of the nuclear things were blown up. Everything happened in the Sinai. There may still be one of their like science centers in Cedar Mountains in the Sinai, where they're doing a lot of their experimentations and things there. So whether that Anunnaki spaceport is active or not, I am not sure, but I feel like that it is a possibility that could still be used, especially if a lot of this stuff is being done interdimensionally and underwater. It's not like we can verify exactly what's happening, but we do know that there's underground tunnel systems and stuff that are leading into all of these sacred sites. So
yeah.
That would be the access point.
Lil is saying here Zechariah was not on point. Sorry. I know that some of the narratives were pushed and manipulated for him, but there's still some places, dates, peoples into all of this stuff that does make sense and can be corroborated. It's whether or not all of his information led to these gods coming back in the whole narrative that they were trying to push, and what Leo Zagami calls the end world scenario from the New World Order. So I agree with Lils here that there are some of the things there maybe in that research that one has to question. But these different spaces, places, and dates here, those can be verified and corroborated by other researchers as well, at least for the most part. But like anything else in this realm, listen to everyone and follow no one.
Too, not a lot of people have kind of honestly stepped up in history and learned how to dissect the Sumerian cuneiform tablets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have yet to see a female scholar or philosopher do that. So we have yet to really actually have a feminine opinion on this.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I wanted to bring this up because you were pointing here at the mouth here for the Anunnaki spaceport, but in this area here, somewhere else, let me bring this other map here, was the ziggurat of Ur. So let me bring that back up here. And I also believe, so this is in Iraq, but I've also believed that this was also somehow maybe the house of one of these particular stargates. Have you ever looked into this one or energetically tapped into this one, see and what's going on there?
I haven't looked into that one.
Maybe something for another show. It's in the general vicinity, and again, it's close to these waters. And so, to your point, we don't know where all of these water tables might go and run underground, and how some of these places might all be connected, even though on the surface you wouldn't think that they're connected. And that's the same case in New Mexico. There's a lot of these portals and crazy sacred sites in New Mexico, and you think they're not connected, but they're connected underground from these water tables and some of these crystal formations on the ground. So who knows what's happening in this neck of the woods as well. Okay, so let me go back to your map. Was there anything else you wanted to point out here? You have the
back on the other one, I just wanted to kind of show how all of these particular locations, like you can see how the ones in teal, so the ones in teal are been charted as the mother arc gates on the planet, and then the ones in red are just considered Ark of the Covenant stargates. And you can kind of see how it's interesting how all of these locations actually form like what looks like an arc over the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point that out. It's kind of interesting.
Well, this one here seems to be pointing right at the ziggurat of Ur. That's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why that's coming up right now as well. So
yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love when you and I do shows together. We kind of like download stuff live. It's really cool. Okay, very cool. Ronnie says exactly. Okay, thank you. Knowledge is wisdom. What's that? Knowledge and wisdom, keepers of knowledge. M9. Thank you. Even underground, ground is connected. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, very good. Okay, what do you think, Indigo? Are we good to go for this show? Is there anything else you want to share with the audience? Or actually maybe some last words of wisdom. I know there's a lot of people out there who are still very stressed, and there's a lot of changes going about in their realm, whether that's their finances, the health situation, this idea maybe an alien invasion. What would you recommend to these people here to maybe ground themselves and mostly how to walk away from the fear and empower themselves? What would you say to them?
I would say to live in the now, focus on your blessings, be conscious of negative thoughts, and ask Divine Source and your higher self to continue to guide you. And and just believe in miracles.
I agree. I agree. There are miracles. There are some really, really weird shit at the very least. People call me woo, and some people call me woo woo. And so this is a deep woo woo episode. So you wonder why. Well, thank you so much, Indigo. Let me bring up your slides again here so people can go and follow you. So hold on a second here so I can zoom out of this one for some reason. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can find Indigo at IndigoAngel222.com. Also here on YouTube at IndigoAngel and on her Patreon at patreon.com/IndigoAngel. Now, guys, all these links are in the description box below. And there also you will find the coupon code if you want to avail yourself of one of these amazing packages that is on sale for this month here. And it is Beyond Space Mystic, lower caps is the coupon code. So guys, if you like this content, also please remember to like, share, and subscribe here on our backup channel. And now we are about to switch over to the Patreon show. So if you're already members of our Patreon, you will see a link within a minute or two. Indigo will just switch gears here and post a live stream from our Patreon box, and there we'll get into some crystal clearing for you guys. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm JeanClaude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome. Oh, and don't forget, actually, tonight I have a Breaking the Clouds coming up. This is a monthly show with Penny Kelly, and we're going to do a look-see. That's her style of remote viewing into the next couple of weeks and months here. So you don't want to miss that. That's at 8 o'clock Eastern. So again, if you want to meet us here, Indigo and I, on Patreon, you can do so in the next 5 minutes. You will see the link appear there, and that is for the Insider Access Pass members. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Indigo. Have a great day, and we'll see you in a minute. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.